Well, I was going to make a video about. I was going to go on to the beta and do a couple Torcrest runs with the Shadow Priest and the Fury Warrior. I wanted to test out single-minded Fury versus two-handed, dual-wielding two-handers, or Titan's Grip, whatever you want to call it. But all the realms are down. Hooray! That's fine. But this gives me an opportunity to talk about what I think Blizzard should do. Not like they're ever going to listen to me. I'm not like some big streamer. I ain't the best of the best. As Pre said in other videos, I'm just a casual for the most part. I'm just an average gamer. You know, and from an average gamer's point of view, you know, not looking at these crazy endgame systems, not looking at all this grinding that you'd have to do. To be honest with you, if Blizzard took less time coming up with borrowed power systems, if they stopped stacking system after system after system on each other and put all of that time and development energy into a story. Not a story of like, it's the easiest way to describe it. Not a story as in not a story as in the actual lore, but you think about your journey as far as gearing up and going through these raids with your characters. It is like a story. And whether it's they take extra time to put interesting drops into the game, now that we don't have Titans or Titan forging or war forging, you know, make loot rare again, make it impactful when you get it, and just just make a lot of zones with a lot of content, or even not that many zones, you know, 4 zones or 5 zones to level up in, and then 1 endgame zone, and just pack it full of stuff to do, full of challenges to do, and just give us a level 60 talent. Next expansion, give us a level 70 talent. Give us a couple new abilities or rank 2s to some abilities to tweak out the specs. Spend more time on the specs themselves. Don't worry about this borrowed power crap, you know, because you don't need it. You don't. If they went back to how it was in, I'd say vanilla, but not so much. More like BC or Wrath. You know, you were leveling up to a new level of power. You got maybe a new spell apiece or something like that, or a rank 2 to a spell. And that was your power increase, the levels and the extra ability. And that was it. And everything else was, they were doing their best to balance it, I'll say that. But, you know, there was enough content to do to keep you engaged in the game for a long time. You know, a long time. But, I don't know. They got themselves in this infinite loop of, we need to have some exciting system that's totally different than anything else. And you don't need that. You don't. Different game modes like Torghast are amazing, you know, stuff like that for fun, you know, for maybe doing that to get, like, say if they did if they just had Torghast with earning the legendary system like it was, and took all the development time for all the soul binds, all the balancing bullcrap that they've tried to do with all the Covenant abilities, and took all that time and put it into the zones, and put it into the endgame content, the different activities to do, different like world bosses to take down, and actually made them difficult. Yo, I just picked up a wanted quest that would suggest 3 players, but guess what? I can solo it if I know what I'm doing. Make it where you actually need 3 players, Blizzard. How hard is that? Increase the difficulty a little bit in the open world, you know? Take that extra time and make the dungeons interesting. Make a few more dungeons. You know, have extra zones come out in patches afterwards, which you've kind of stuck yourself into that, because once you came out with, you know, Argus, you're like, oh crap, well, the next expansion, we got to come out with a couple new zones, and then they did. It's like, what are they going to put up? What are they going to do in Shadowlands? You know, they're going to have 3 new zones now, or 4 new zones or something like that coming in. Is that where all their development time is going? I mean, it's not that hard. It's not that hard just to focus on the core gameplay, and just making gear difficult to get. If you make gear difficult to get, people will come together to get that gear. Sure, there's going to be drama. Sure, there's going to be, I want to be able to solo everything in the game. Well, you know what? You can cry in the corner because this is not a solo game. It's an MMO. Congratulations. Welcome to reality. You know how many people would come back for an expansion like that without the borrowed power system crap? It's frustrating. It's really frustrating. The only system, now to give them, to be a little bit fair, I'm going to talk about the only system that I've ever considered that I would like to see in World of Warcraft. And I don't know how they do it. I really don't. But you want to talk about a progressive power system, right? Well, I'm an old school MMO player. I played EverQuest when, it was only like 2 expansions in when I started it. I don't even know how long ago that was. Please don't date me. Anyway, I'm old, all right? And I don't know, in EverQuest they had something called alternate advancement abilities, AAs, right? And it was basically a bar that you can turn on, and you could allocate how much experience you wanted to put toward that bar, leveling up just like a regular experience bar. And for whatever reason, they would tune it weird so that more difficult content, just killing mobs, just grinding mobs, would fill up those bars faster, and you grind AAs faster. And these AAs would have multiple tabs. And granted, they were all like individual per character, but I'm sure Blizzard could do, bind on, or not bind on account, but account-wide AA unlocks. But like, it was cool because it's like you had progression on your character, and then you had attunements to unlock different places. Like when my guild, Fist of Fate, back in EverQuest were going, they had a requirement. You had to have all your defensive AAs done before you started raiding. And I'm like, what is a defensive AA? And I was looking. The very first page, I finally found it. And I went a little bit overboard. I did. Because they had mitigation, dodge, parry, armor, increase, and then they had all of the schools of magic resistances. And they're talking like you need, well, I might be wrong here, but because it's been over a decade, but it was like 6 AAs to get 1 point in mitigation, or so you'd have to grind 6 levels worth of experience to put 1 point in mitigation, which I think was like 10% damage mitigation when you get for physical attacks. And it was like 3 or 4 AAs per point of resist for schools of magic. Now they were just talking about the mitigation, dodge, parry, block if you could use a shield, stuff like that. I decided to get all that done, and then I started doing it into the resist AAs. I wasted so much time. But I was tougher. I didn't have to worry about dying to certain spells and abilities when we started to raid. Granted, EverQuest was a completely different beast, but it was cool because each expansion released a new tab worth of AAs. Most of them did anyway. And some of them were like simple abilities. Like I played a shaman back then. And we had Cannibalize, which is basically like life tap for a warlock. You eat a little bit of health and you get a little mana back. So basically you'd just be gnawing at your arm. Well, there was an AA ability that was called Mass Cannibalize. That was like 10 AAs to get it. And it took a long time to grind it up because it was on the second tab. But once you got it, you hit that, I think once every 5 minutes or something like that, you would consume, I think it was like 80% of your health, and it would pretty much fill up your mana bar, which was incredibly powerful, especially if you knew how to stay out of the crap. Like if you weren't staying in the fire, it was incredibly powerful. And, but no, even going on like that, the AA abilities, they gave you an option. Like, say a shaman back then, I'll just use them as an example. They were basically a support class. They could buff every stat, like plus 50 to agility, plus 50 to strength, and they were all separate buffs. They could bless people with movement speed, attack speed, bless their weapons so they could proc damage, all that good stuff. Well, basically, and that was the buffing part. And then I also had damage over time effects I could cast. I think I had 3 or 4 of them. I had a couple nukes, which are direct damage, big heavy hitters. And I had some heal over time spells and some direct heal spells. So the shaman was like a mix of everything. But the cool thing is that everybody got the same AA tabs up to a certain point, and then they started diversifying by class after a certain amount of expansions. So I got my defensive AAs. I got my mass cannibalize. I got my direct buff duration extended AAs because, shamans did a lot of buffs, so we needed that. And then I started having fun with it because there was these 2 necromancers I used to go out to high-level zones and kite mobs with. And what they do is they put a snare on a bunch of red-level mobs, which were like, they would die in one hit if they got hit by these things. It was not friendly. But what they could do is they could snare them and load them up with dots and run away. And they would just kite them. And I remember there was these two that I think it was Gomf and Savang. I think those were their names. And they would go into the same instance with each other, and they would compete to see who could kite more mobs without dying. I think Gomf won with 7 mobs at a time because it was a intensive thing because you had to keep all of them snared, keep track of how long you had left on the snare, keep all of them fully dotted, and if somebody resisted a snare, oh boy, you better run. You better run for the hills. But that was grinding A's like a boss. Like Necros could grind A's all day like that and walk away with like 30 or 40 AAs in an hour. It was stupid how fast they could do those things. But so I was hanging out with them a lot, so I just had maxed out my dot AAs. And it was crazy when I finally, because Gomp didn't actually go into his further tiers for dots. He wanted to make sure his snares weren't resisted, so he was putting more A's into less fizzling on his spells and less being resisted. So I actually started pulling aggro from him on some of them because I maxed out my DOT AAs. And it was kind of cool. It turned my shaman went from being just a support class into now I can actually put out some legitimate damage. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how Blizzard would implement something like that, but it's something that would carry forward from expansion to expansion to expansion to expansion to expansion, because EverQuest is, as far as I know, it's still going. Is it still going? I need to actually look that up at some point. And they're like 14, 15 expansions deep, and they still have the AA system rolling, So, I don't know. It'd be a cool thing maybe for them to implement. Like certain tabs would be account-wide, others would be, you just have to grind them out per character, Because then you could expand into other things. You could have AAs for cosmetics. You could have AAs for different achievements. You could I don't know, for crafting and trade skills. You could have A's to go into a lot of different aspects of your character so you can specialize in whatever you want. And if you make up enough of them, Blizzard's talking about meaningful choice. Something like that is meaningful. You're going through, you're going through and you're looking at this wide variety list of things that you could do or be, and you're like, I'm going to be this. Because back in EverQuest, I knew a couple other shamans in the guild that never even touched any of their damage AAs. They went all into heal over time and straight on heal AAs. So, they could almost out heal a cleric that had no AAs, which a cleric with AAs would still blow them out of the water. But you see what I'm saying? More to the point that they could actually replace a cleric if they were down a cleric for raid in the sea heal rotation. And for anybody that doesn't know what that is, a sea heal rotation, this is how old and ghetto EverQuest was, right? Basically, it was a chat window, a channel that only clerics could see or the people in the sea heal rotation channel could see. Sometimes it was shamans. And they just have a macro where they press complete heal. Complete heal for a cleric was a 10-second long cast that would completely fill the hit points of your target. So the main tank would be the target for all of the clerics. Normally you needed about 5 clerics. And what would happen is he goes into combat. The first cleric starts healing, right? The tank pulls, I don't know, at a 4 count before the first heal goes off. And every 2 seconds, another complete heal is going. And another. And another. And another. And another. And all the clerics are basically staring at this channel the entire time, waiting for the line, casting C heal on the tank, so-and-so, you're next. And as soon as you saw your name come up as next, you'd hit your C heal. Or you'd wait 1, 2, and then you'd hit it. That's literally all it was. But you needed that to keep tanks alive. What can I say? Anyway, this is a long enough rant. I guess I'll try to get some of those videos out tomorrow. I'm really interested to see, because I wanted to wait as long as possible before I started doing anything like telling the differences or testing the differences, because Blizzard's making changes all the damn time. And it looks like they're done with the specs for the most part. They might do one more round of tuning, but I want to see how, like I said, single-minded fury works against Titan's grip. I want to have the Shadow Priest go through Torghast just a little bit more, because they have some. I took a Shadow Priest through there earlier on, and it wasn't all that fun. But well, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if anything's changed. Anyway, have a good day. Have a good day. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter, and drink your milk. Moo.